Men and women of culture, we meet again. Because in this video, we need to talk about simp covers. Swaggelhaus is not above the occasional simp cover. This happens to be the comic book from my childhood that turned me into the man I am today. I don't know why the bag is sticky. But let us get into this topic here. We need to talk about the recent explosion, no pun intended, of simp covers into the market. Now, when I say simp covers, what do I mean by that? Well, of course, I am talking about comic book covers that have very scantily clad men and women, but mostly men, of characters on the cover. And in this video, I kind of want to talk about this recent explosion of these types of covers and see if we can kind of ask ourselves the question, how reliable are these comic books as investments? Are they more reliable than that of regular keys? Well, in this video, we're going to go through some of the trends that have been happening recently, talk about some of the books that have been popping off in the market, and then later on talk about some of the big comic book grails that are these types of covers and see what the values have been throughout their lifespan. But before I get into it, if you guys could drop me a like or a comment or subscribe if you're enjoying the content, helps support the channel, doing those things, I'd appreciate it. But let us get into this video here today. Now, I have been doing my research for this, okay? I have been studying these covers off camera, in the dark, by myself, for scientific reasons only. Now, just before I get into it, a little bit of a serious word here. We're going to go into this from an analytical approach, okay? I don't mean to, trigger anyone by using the word simp. I realize that, in 2023, the word can be, a controversial word for other reasons. But when I say this word, I am referring to these types of covers. We know what the drill is, guys. We can be mature about this, okay? No chuckle house back there, okay? No being all goofy about this. We can be mature adults. I'm a man. I'm 40. Remember, I told you guys last week. All right, let us get into this video here today. And really, this is something that I had started to think about when we had the recent kind of trending list that came out. Now, here I am on Key Collector. This is their top 20 books that have moved a lot in the market. And one of the books I noticed was All-Star Comics number 58. This, of course, is the first appearance of Power Girl. And it's not necessarily this particular book that made me think about this video, but recently in the market, there has been so many different types of Power Girl covers that have really been blowing up. We have, of course, Action Comics number 1050, drawn by Rafa Sandoval. This is a book that came out a couple weeks back and was definitely moving a lot in the market. There was also this other variant of Action Comics, which was the Virgin KRS variant. This was another one that was super hot in the market. And this one had a lot of attention, a lot of eyeballs on it. Now, I don't really know why there were a lot of people in the market that were looking at this book. I mean, I guess if I really focus in on the art, if I zoom in here and I kind of go to, I guess, this particular part of the image, I really do like how he did the cape. The cape right here looks really good. I can see that being the reason why people, wanted to have this cover. But these books have been moving quite a lot in the market, so much so that, we have Action Comics number 1053, a cover by Will Jack that is also going to be coming out, in the next couple weeks, that also features Power Girl with a very nice looking cape. Additionally, if we go over to the CBSI show done by House of Stein, shout out to those guys, Brian McClay, Ben Stein, and the team over there that do these lists every week. They were talking about Battle Chasers number 1 that had recently made the hot list. Now, granted, Battle Chasers has been announced that it was going to be, adapted into a show or an animation or whatever the case may be. And it just so happens that, Battle Chasers number 1 had a variant cover, this one right here, that was kind of like an exclusive cover at the time that obviously featured a very voluptuous woman on it. Now, what I thought was particularly interesting about this book is that you'll notice it's a book that came out in 1988. And I think that this is actually something that if we go back to, the trends of the comic book industry, specifically that of the early 90s, when we had that, market cycle, the market boom of the 90s, the speculation bubble, when all of that was coming out, Death of Superman, Jim Lee, X-Men number 1, when that market crashed, one of the things that the market did after, there was a big pullback in the industry was to go into very, very voluptuous drawings of women and men. I mean, that is the era in which we got, the Captain America with the Rob Liefeld chest. And it is really interesting to sort of make that parallel comparison to where we are today, where we had this big, kind of market cycle, this speculation boom, if you want to call it that, during COVID lockdown. And now here in 2023, we're kind of in this place where, I think a lot of the comic book publishers, a lot of the comic book retailers are looking to create, any sort of momentum they can to sell books. I mean, this is where we are going into, the gimmick covers, and of those gimmicks can often be a lot of sexualized imagery that we're seeing. I think that is one of the reasons why we are seeing a lot of these types of books hitting the market recently, because they get attention. They get a lot of comic book buyers to simply make those cover purchases. And I think that is something that, retailers know. And in these markets where, we're kind of in the bear cycles, we're in the down markets, you need to do anything you can in order to generate, those sales and that attention. Now, on that note, let me just show you guys a couple other things before I kind of jump into some of the Grail J. Scott Campbell books that I think are the ones that the market, often goes to. But here is, the retailers, big time collectibles. They do a lot of different covers, so I'm not just like isolating them as someone who is doing, these specific simp covers. But, what you'll notice is that they definitely have a market where they push the boundaries of maturity in their particular covers. Here is an Alex Garza cover, and this is the regular cover. Then they have the next one, which they call the Naughty Virgin cover, which you can see right there. There's a little censor bubble, not really sure what it is covering. And then right here, you have the full Naughty Virgin variant, which all of a sudden now she is missing a little something on her bottom half. On top of that, there was another one that they had released. This one was limited to 400. It's a Power Hour one with the White Queen. Now you have the regular cover of cover A, I guess we would call it. Then you get the cover B, which is the sheer version. You get cover C, which is the Naughty Virgin. And then you get cover D, which is the full Naughty Virgin. The thing I'm kind of wondering is, what is the difference between this one and this one right here? What does full naughty imply? I'm not really sure, but this is definitely an interesting thing to see, that there's a lot of retailers, a lot of companies that have been pushing these types of covers. Dynamite Comics, shout out to Nick Barucci. They always do amazing, work over there as well, but they too have been known to do a lot of these types of covers. Of course, Vampirella is, famous for definitely doing more risky stuff in the comic book industry. Now, not to suggest that there hasn't always been sexuality in comic book covers, but I really think that it was Pop Kill #1 that came out in August by Adam Hughes that really sort of kind of started this momentum to create a lot of these covers in the market recently. Of course, if you guys don't know this one, this is a Pop Kill cover. They had a regular one where this woman was wearing a t-shirt, and then they had this risky variant that came out where obviously she is topless, but Go Collect has it covered up right there. And the 9.8s, as soon as they came out, this was a book that was absolutely flying in the market. Of course, when it first originally came out, it dropped at the $389.50 price point. Now it's kind of down to the $337 range. But, generally speaking, I mean, if we're thinking about that, I mean, that is basically printing money on demand right there, where you can have a new comic book that comes out that instantaneously is hitting the $400 CGC 9 point. Very, very impressive and very, very alluring for a lot of companies to want to go this route in order to generate revenue in this current comic book climate that we live in. Now, I think the Grail comic books that are interesting to focus on are the J. Scott Campbell ones. Of course, if you guys don't know, J. Scott Campbell, one of the great artists out there in the industry, obviously very, very talented, and has done a lot of covers that are very, very sexual in nature. And this one right here, Amazing Spider-Man Presents Black Cat #1 from 2010. This particular variant definitely seems to be one of the big kind of what I would call simp grails that exist out there in the market. I mean, I don't really know why people like this cover. Maybe you guys can let me know in the comments. Perhaps it is the trade dress that people really enjoy that makes this cover stand out amongst the rest. But let's focus in here on the 9.8 grades. Now, this is obviously a very, very low print run, very, very rare book. Only 69 9.8s on the 69 guys. Get your mind out of the gutter, okay? Get your mind out of the gutter. Fair market value is $1,500. This is definitely a book that sells above the 4-figure range. But one of the things I wanted to point out to you guys is pay attention in particular to the graph right here. You can see how volatile this book is in any given day, in any given sale. All the way back in 2015, this was a book that shot up, to the $1,375 range. Actually, this is May of 2016. And then the next sale after that actually dropped down to the $600 range in December. So you can definitely see, like, these are the types of books that, when they're rare, there's definitely going to be a lot of volatility. And depending on where the market is, depending on where the attention is in the market, there can be a lot of ups and downs in the values for this thing. Now, generally speaking, if we look at the price for December of 2022 at the $1,600 range, certainly that is a lot more expensive than when it started at $200 in 2013. But, it's been a bumpy ride along the way. On top of that, there's this one right here, Uncanny X-Men number 510, the sketch cover. Now, this one is extremely low print count, only 16 on the census. Of course, this is the J. Scott Campbell cover that has Psylocke on it. Obviously, Psylocke, a very, very popular character amongst comic book collectors. But you can see it's really hard to price this thing because there's only been 3 sales in the last, decade or so. It started at $725 in 2013, shot all the way up to $12,500 in 2018. And then there was an auction this past year that went for $8,600. So, the volatility in the market with these types of covers is definitely something to consider. If we go to the regular variant edition for this one, not the sketch cover, you'll see 9.8s have 144 on the census. Fair market value is around the kind of $400 range. And you can see that this is also, again, another book that has had a lot of volatility throughout its life cycle. And I wouldn't necessarily say that this is a book that has grown organically. There's been different times, different peaks and valleys for this thing, depending on the type of buyer and the type of person that is looking at that particular auction at that particular moment in time. So it is really interesting to talk about this idea of the simp cover. How investable are these things? I do think that there are those grails that stand out amongst comic book collectors that people definitely want in their collection. There's a lot of Mary Jane covers by J. Scott Campbell. There's some other Adam Hughes covers that people really, really like. And, I would say that sexuality in comic books has been something that, is a part of the history. I mean, I would definitely make the argument, dating all the way back to the golden age, when you have a lot of the good girl covers, a lot of the good girl art, that is something that, comic book collectors are very, very, passionate about and very interested in. And there's always been this subset of comic book collectors that really, really enjoy the risky stuff out there in the industry. I'm not here to say that, simp covers are necessarily a bad thing, but what I am here to say is that it does seem like, as we kind of come off the heels of this comic book boom, similar to that of the early 90s, it does feel like a lot of these covers are trying to manufacture interest, manufacture revenue in order to get a quick sale from a lot of comic book collectors out there. But, I think it is important to point out that there are a lot of these types of covers that never hit those sort of Black Cat number 1s or never hit that X-Men 510 sketch cover value range because of the fact that, there's just so many of them. There's a lot of noise out there. And when the market starts to shift its focus into other covers out there, that's when you see a lot of these books dropping in price. Anyways, that's all I got for this video. That was me just sort of talking about this topic, which I thought was really interesting. It felt like there was a lot more of this stuff coming out recently. What do you guys think about this genre of comic book? What do you guys think about this genre of cover? Kickstarter goes live tomorrow. Unfortunately, I did not create a sexual variant cover for my comic book, so I will probably, sell 0 copies. Anyways, that's all I got for this one. Check out the Kickstarter, link in the description. Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content. I'll see you in the next video.